The lights on our tree flickered weakly as if even they were embarrassed. My name is Elena, I'm 35, and for years I've made Christmas feel like a festival in this family. The stockings, the food, the gifts, most of all the toys for my nephews. But this year when I asked about bringing my 2 daughters to Christmas morning, my father didn't even blink. "We don't have space for your kids at Christmas," he said, his voice calm like he was deciding on what wine to pour. My brother leaned back in his chair, smirk spreading like oil. "Yeah, just bring yourself. They're too loud anyway." The room didn't fall silent. That was the cruelest part. Nobody gasped, nobody defended me. The only sound was my sister tapping her phone under the table. I nodded because sometimes silence is easier than begging. But in my chest something splintered. That night I went to the closet where the toys were hidden under red wrapping paper and bows. The stuffed animals, the Lego sets, the shiny truck. Each one bought with my overtime shifts, each one wrapped with my girls at my side, dreaming of their cousins' laughter. I loaded them quietly into the trunk of my car. Not in anger. No, in clarity. At 7:10 a.m. my phone buzzed. "My sister, where are the presents? They're crying." I stared at the screen, my daughter still asleep upstairs. My hands shook as I typed back, every word sharper than the last. "Ask your golden boys. This year Santa didn't stop for cruelty." Have you ever had family cross your boundaries so hard it rewrote what love meant? Tell me in the comments. The toys still in my trunk felt heavier now. Not as gifts withheld but as proof. Proof that silence has teeth. The phone buzzed again, this time with 3 calls back to back from my sister. I didn't answer. The sound of her name lighting up my screen felt like a fire alarm in a locked room. Instead I stood by the window watching the frost on the glass melt where my breath touched it. My girls padded down the stairs in their pajamas, hair messy, faces still lit with the innocence that hadn't yet been shattered by family politics. "Are we going to Grandma's?" my oldest asked, rubbing her eyes. I swallowed. The lie sat heavy on my tongue but I forced it out. "Not this year, baby. Grandma said it's too crowded." She frowned. "But they have a big house." She wasn't wrong. My parents' home was sprawling with more than enough space for 2 little girls. But space wasn't the problem. Acceptance was. From the kitchen table my phone buzzed again. This time it was Dad. One message: "You didn't have to make this harder. Just bring yourself next year." Next year. As if my daughters were optional, like folding chairs you only bring out when needed. I walked to the trunk and lifted the lid. The toys sat there in silence, wrapped in red, green, and gold. Their colors mocked me, too bright against the dull gray morning. One package slipped, the paper tearing slightly, revealing the corner of a doll's box. My youngest squealed. "Is that for me?" she asked. I looked down at her wide eyes and shook my head. "No, honey. Not for them either. These are ours now." And just like that, a new idea began to take root, quiet but certain. If they thought my daughters didn't belong, then neither did the gifts that once held the weight of my love. In that moment I didn't feel cruel. I felt free. By mid-morning the group chat was chaos. My sister's texts turned from caps-locked rage to guilt-soaked daggers. "You ruined Christmas for them. They're just kids, Elena. You could have handled this like an adult." Each one hit, but none cut deep enough to reopen the wound. Because the truth sat sharper. They had already ruined Christmas the second they uninvited my daughters. My brother finally chimed in, real classy. "Punish my kids because you can't get over yourself." I stared at his words, my hands trembling. Punish? For years I had been Santa, the fairy godmother, the one who never showed up empty-handed. And now, for simply pulling back, I was the villain. I scrolled further up, rereading Dad's single message. "Just bring yourself next year." The phrasing stuck like a splinter. Bring yourself. Not "we'll miss the girls." Not "maybe next time." Just the invitation of me stripped from the very role that defined me. Mother. On the counter sat one of the toys I had accidentally left unwrapped. A small red car my daughters had begged me to give their cousin. I picked it up, rolling it in my palm. The wheels spun silently, almost mocking me. My oldest leaned against me, her voice barely a whisper. "Mom, do they not like us?" Her words cracked something open. I bent down, met her gaze, and said, "They just forgot what love is supposed to look like." But I didn't. In that moment I decided. The gifts weren't going back under their tree. They would stay here under hours, a new tradition born from absence. And while my family feasted and laughed, I was already drafting my reply, one that would sting sharper than silence. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the heater. I sat at the kitchen table, phone glowing against the dim light. Their words kept rolling in, guilt-tripping, twisting, blaming. But none of them noticed the pattern. Not once did anyone ask about my daughters. Not once. I typed slowly, deliberately, each word a scalpel. You said there was no space for my kids. So there was no space for my gifts. Seems fair. I hit send. Silence. For the first time all morning the group chat froze. I watched the little typing bubble blink, then disappear, then reappear. No message came through. In the stillness I heard my girls giggling in the living room. They had torn open 2 of the presents from the trunk, their joy pure, untouched by rejection. My youngest clutched a stuffed bear, already giving it a name. That sight burned into me like sunlight through glass, fragile yet fierce. They had been denied a place at the table, but here they were, feasting on joy anyway. Finally, Dad's reply appeared. Don't be dramatic. We just wanted some peace this year. Peace. A word so clean, so holy. Yet it had been weaponized to cut my daughters out. I locked the screen, pressing it flat on the table. My reflection stared back from the black glass. And for the first time I didn't see a woman desperate for approval. I saw someone ready to redraw the lines. The gifts weren't the revenge. The revenge was showing them what Christmas without us actually looked like. And tomorrow they would taste it fully. The morning stretched on, and I could almost hear the echo of my family's holiday chaos in my head. Clattering dishes, wrapping paper torn open, fake laughter bouncing off walls. But in my house it was different. Softer. My daughters danced around the living room, ribbons trailing behind them like comets. I picked up my phone again. A new text had arrived, this time from my sister. You're heartless. They're kids. They didn't do anything. My fingers hovered. The anger wanted to answer, but then my eyes caught something on the mantel. A framed photo from last year's Christmas. My nephews tearing into gifts I had bought, my daughters in the background, smiling but empty-handed. That memory seared. I remembered my father saying, the boys should go first, when the gifts were handed out. I remembered my brother smirking as my daughters waited. I remembered how no one noticed when my girls only got 2 small things while their cousins had a mountain. The truth snapped clear. My sister was wrong. Those boys hadn't done nothing. They had learned entitlement from the silence of their parents. And I had been their enabler. I grabbed a sticky note and scribbled something with a red marker. I stuck it on the biggest wrapped box in the trunk. Reserved. For children who know love when they see it. Not a single member of my family would ever read it, but it didn't matter. The symbol was for me and for my daughters who now understood that Christmas was ours to define. When my phone buzzed again I didn't look. For once their noise wasn't louder than my peace. By evening their desperation finally cracked into something new. Phone calls from numbers I didn't recognize. My brother's wife. My aunt. Even my cousin from out of state. One after another, voices thick with practiced sweetness. Hey Elena, maybe you should just bring the gifts over. For the kids' sake. The kids' sake. Always their kids. Never mine. I let the calls ring out one by one until my voicemail box was full. When I finally checked it, one message stood out. My aunt's voice, low, edged with irritation. You still wear that perfume? I swear I smelled it on your coat last week. You always linger where you're not wanted. I laughed under my breath. Even in apology-disguised begging, they couldn't resist slipping in poison. The living room glowed golden. My daughters sat curled together playing with their new dollhouse, doors creaking open, lights flickering inside. The sound of their laughter filled the walls in a way no voicemail ever could. I sat down beside them, pulling out the last unopened package from the trunk. A board game. We cleared space on the rug, dice clicking, cards sliding, my youngest's laughter spilling out until she fell against me. That's when my phone buzzed with one more message from Dad. I hope you're proud. They cried all day. You ruined Christmas. I stared at it, heart steady now. No spike, no sting. Just stillness. I typed one sentence back. You ruined it the moment you told me my daughters didn't belong. I hit send, then powered the phone off. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was mine. The next morning, the world outside was blanketed in fresh snow. The quiet felt ceremonial, like the universe had thrown a white sheet over the wreckage of yesterday. My daughters burst into the living room in their pajamas, giggling, dragging their new toys across the floor like old friends. I made pancakes. No rush, no pretending. Just us. Halfway through breakfast, my sister showed up at my door. Her hair was unbrushed, her eyes wild like she hadn't slept. She didn't even knock, just stormed in, holding her phone like a weapon. "You couldn't just let them have their presents?" she hissed. "Do you know how they cried? Do you know what you did?" I didn't answer right away. I poured syrup over my daughter's pancakes, the golden stream catching the light. Finally, I turned to her. "I know exactly what I did," I said softly. "For the first time, I chose my kids over yours." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "They're just children," she snapped. "You're punishing them for our fight." "No," I said, standing now. "I'm teaching mine what happens when people treat them as less. I'm teaching them they deserve better." Her lips trembled, but no words came. She looked around at the cozy scene. The laughter, the warmth, the safety, and something in her eyes shifted. Not guilt. Envy. "You've changed," she muttered. I nodded. Finally. She left without slamming the door, which was its own kind of silence. At the table, my youngest looked up at me with sticky fingers. "Mom, are we having Christmas like this every year now?" I smiled. "Exactly like this." And in that moment I knew. This wasn't revenge. It was rebirth. A week later, the texts had dwindled into silence. No apologies, no bridges, just absence. But the absence didn't ache the way I once feared it would. It gave me room to breathe. I stood in my living room, the tree still glowing faintly, ornaments catching the last of the holiday light. The toys, once symbols of obligation, were now scattered across the floor, claimed, loved, worn in by small hands that actually mattered. The photo from last year still sat on the mantel. I picked it up. My nephew's beaming, my daughter's half hidden. I studied it for a long time, then slid it into a drawer. Some things didn't need to decorate my walls anymore. That night I wrote one final message. Not in anger but in clarity. "You made your choice when you uninvited my girls. I made mine when I took back what was mine to give. If you want to see us again, it won't be on terms where my daughters are treated like extras in their own family. Until then, we're done pretending." I didn't send it to the group chat. I sent it only to Dad. The one who had started it with a sentence about space. His reply came hours later. Just 2 words. "I'm sorry." I didn't write back. Some apologies aren't a door, they're a mirror. I looked around at my girls, their laughter spilling through the room, filling every corner. For the first time in years, Christmas felt whole. Not because of them, but because I had finally chosen us.